I think the rhetoric from the Russian side has definitely shifted, and that is part of what makes this particular build-up concerning. With the spring build-up in 2021, there was a general narrative of denial, of refusing to admit that the forces on the border with Ukraine were there for anything other than drills. Whereas now we have instances of the Russian foreign minister telling the US ambassador that Russia is not scared of anybody, including the US. The language is quite confrontational that has been used by Russia. It has drawn red lines, which by their very definition are difficult to step back from. And so that use of language in the diplomatic field, in the negotiations that have been happening between the US and Russia, and the way that Russian ministers have chosen to approach those particular conversations, is challenging because it wasn't part of the environment that was built in spring. And add to this, there are social media reports which are unconfirmed and not necessarily anything in usefully instructive, but that they indicate that the conversations that families are having with their soldiers before they depart to staging areas in Ukraine they're more the kind of conversation of, good luck, I hope to see you soon, rather than have fun on another exercise. And of course, there's only so much that we can really read into those, but it's just interesting to note the way in which the rhetoric has changed. We can look at the rhetoric coming out of Lukashenko in Belarus. He's being very bellicose, He's said expressly that Belarus is being faced and attacked with hybrid warfare from the Western forces. So the language from the political parties involved seems to have changed significantly from spring. The language that we're hearing around the military forces as they move also seems to have shifted, and whilst that evidence is relatively thin at the moment, it's still worth considering. So the current paradigm of military aggression and assertiveness in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world has its roots in a feeling within the Kremlin that the power of Russia has not been properly respected and that it has not been afforded its place on the international stage. So primarily up until Christmas, we saw the movement of armoured fighting vehicles and howitzers, main battle tanks, into Russian training grounds at Pogonovo, Voronezh, and various other areas in and around the border of Ukraine, typically up to 200 kilometers from the border. However, since the beginning of January, there's been a significant increase in the frequency of movements of troops into those regions. We've seen a change in the equipment that has been deployed. So there is now a lot more strategic, operational and tactical air defense in the area. We've, of course, seen the movement of a significant body of troops from the Eastern Military District, which typically is responsible for protecting Russia's Pacific coast. They have been transported all the way across Russia with all of their equipment to Belarus, notionally to begin a exercise there with the Belarusian troops. In addition to this, we've seen a much greater presence of electronic warfare equipment, theatre level command and control systems, communication systems. And then most interestingly, we've begun to see the arrival of troops to garrison and operate the vehicles that were already deployed. So that's an important part of understanding the imminence of any potential threat. Until now, there were actually very insufficient personnel to operate the vehicles and equipment that have been staged in Voronezh and Pogonovo. But now there are a lot more troops coming in. We can see that there is snow on tents that is beginning to melt as the tents are used. The tracks and the pavements in and through these training grounds, and these camps are being churned up by a lot of footfall. And that gives us an indication that the tenor and the type of the build-up has shifted quite significantly since before Christmas. I'm aware that there is a difference in opinion depending on who you speak to as to whether or not an invasion is going to happen at all, or whether or not Russia will expand its conflict with Ukraine. And of course, the Russians deny that there is anything malicious to its build-up at all. But against all of that, we have to balance the fact that this has been a very, very open movement of a significant proportion of the Russian ground troops. The total estimates vary between 70, 80, or even 100,000 troops. And to put that into context, there are only 280,000 in the Russian ground troops in their entirety. So if we take even the lower end of the estimate, Russia has moved a quarter of its entire ground forces and made them ready around Ukraine. So it's a little bit difficult to see how it could walk backwards from this, given the rhetoric, given the language that it has used in terms of laying out its demands to NATO and to the US. So the tactical significance of all of this, it means that Russia is relatively well positioned to provide a military option, a military solution to the requests that it has made. Its forces are notionally ready and well equipped. They have had a very high tempo of training, especially in the past 5 years. They've had a lot of experience of modern warfare in Syria and, of course, in Ukraine. And so they are in a place whereby they could theoretically enact the political desires of the Russian leadership. And that is tactically significant because it could have strategic effects. I think the Russian military has been asked to provide a military solution to the political goals that the Kremlin is trying to achieve. And I think that it has, in all likelihood, prepared more than one solution, more than one eventuality, so that it is not forced into a ground invasion of Ukraine to achieve the goals that it has been asked to support. So I think we should be wary of any analyses which claim to have a firm understanding of how a war between Ukraine and Russia would play out, because we can't really know what assumptions the Russian general staff are making and what they expect to happen in the event of a conflict with Ukraine. I think it is likely that they have more than one solution, that they have more than one proposed avenue the Kremlin could choose to pursue if the diplomatic negotiations are unsuccessful, or if it's perceived that force is necessary to get what is needed for Russia to feel safe, or whichever the political goals are, again, because it's not entirely clear all of the time.